He got arrested in the middle of our anniversary dinner, right there, between the oysters and the crème brûlée, cops, guns, screaming. My dress soaked in rose someone knocked over during the chaos. People stared like I was some kind of mafia wife. And maybe I was. Because 2 hours later, while sitting in the back of a police cruiser in a Valentino gown I definitely couldn't afford, I found out the man I married wasn't just a liar. He was a multi-million-dollar con artist. And I was his dumbest mark. But that's not even the worst part. You know that feeling when everything in your life feels so perfectly curated it could pass for a Pinterest board? Yeah, that was me. Glossy countertops. Spontaneous weekend trips to Napa. A husband who actually asked me about my day and remembered what I said. It was sickening. Really. But the good kind of sickening. Like, I can't believe this is my life. Levels of disgustingly perfect. And then, just like that, poof, reality kicked me straight in the designer teeth. My name's Claire Bennett. I'm 32 years old, which in Los Angeles years is basically retirement age unless you've had the good sense to marry rich or start a wellness brand. I did the former, or so I thought. Derek, my husband, my knight in tailored linen, my personal Ted Lasso with a six-pack, had swept into my life 3 years ago like some handsome hurricane with great credit and an even better smile. The man could charm TSA agents into skipping the pat-down. My mother still brings him up in prayer, and she's not even religious. Anyway, back to the arrest. The restaurant was called Elan, the kind of place where the portions are microscopic, the waiters speak in riddles, and you leave hungrier than you came. Derek had reserved the chef's table, private, romantic, absurdly overpriced. I thought he was going to propose we finally have a baby. I even wore the shoes I hate because he said they made my legs look like wealth. Instead, I watched my husband get tackled into a $600 centerpiece while shouting, "This is a misunderstanding!" and, "Call my lawyer, she's on speed dial." The cuffs came out. Someone gasped. I think I laughed. It was instinctual, like my brain couldn't compute what was happening and decided to treat it like a joke. Derek? Arrested? Please. The man couldn't parallel park without apologizing to the curb. By the time I made it outside, the valet had vanished. Half the guests were filming, and I was standing in heels on cold pavement like some overglammed reality show extra. That's when Officer Sanchez, who looked exactly like someone I would swipe right on under other circumstances, tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Ma'am, we need to talk." When a cop says that to you and you haven't even jaywalked since 2008, something is very, very wrong. Turns out they thought I was involved. As in, complicit. As in, helping Derek steal from half the West Side and probably a few crypto bros in Dubai. I laughed again. Nervous tick, I guess. Sanchez didn't find it funny. Neither did the woman in pantsuit hell who showed up 10 minutes later with an iPad full of documents and an expression that could curdle milk. That's when the real unraveling began. But I'll get to that. Because first, you need to know who Derek really was, or rather, who he never was at all. Want to know what tipped me off that my life was a lie? It wasn't the money, it was the shoes. And those damn shoes changed everything. It all started with those stupid red-bottom heels I never liked. Derek bought them for me after closing what he said was a huge investment deal with some venture capital firm whose name sounded made up. Like literally, I think it was Zenthrax Capital or something that sounds more like a villainous pharmaceutical company than a real business. I wore them maybe twice. They pinched my toes and made me walk like a baby giraffe. But that night, after he got arrested, I couldn't stop staring at them on my bedroom floor like they held all the answers. Because here's the thing. I never told Derek my shoe size. Ever. He said they were a surprise. But they were perfect. Too perfect. Like he had measured my foot in my sleep or something. And that's when I remembered. I never saw a receipt. Not for those. Not for anything. Not once in 3 years of absurdly extravagant gifts did I see a single price tag, bag, or bank statement. At first, I thought it was just romantic. Or okay, maybe a little controlling in a 50 Shades of Beige kind of way. But now it screamed, "You're being managed." So I did what any self-respecting woman with a gut feeling and an internet connection would do. I Googled. But not just Derek. I Googled his assistant. Because his assistant, Marco, was the one who always seemed to know everything, from my dry cleaning schedule to the name of my cousin's dog. He once sent me flowers after I got food poisoning. I never told him I got food poisoning. Hell, I didn't even tell Derek. Marco had no online presence. I don't mean private Instagram. I mean like no digital footprint. At all. Like he was grown in a lab to serve as the assistant of a fake millionaire. I called the number Derek had for him, and it rang 3 times before going straight to some cold, robotic voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I sat there in my overpriced kitchen, still wearing those damn heels, with my laptop glowing in front of me, a bottle of wine to my right, and a growing pit in my stomach. Then I checked our bank account, or I tried. Derek had always said the finances were under his firm's umbrella, which I assumed meant he had some adult-level money management situation going on with accountants and spreadsheets and mysterious acronyms. Nope. The account I had access to, our joint one, had exactly $18.27 in it, which would have been shocking enough if I hadn't also noticed that the last transaction was a withdrawal for exactly $2 million 3 days ago, to a bank in the Cayman Islands, under a name I didn't recognize. That's when I realized I was married to a man who didn't exist. And suddenly, 100 little things started making a terrifying kind of sense. The time we changed cars 3 times in 1 year because he didn't like the smell. The fact that we never had neighbors over because apparently we never had neighbors. That entire block had been rented under shell companies. Even our mail came through a private P.O. box that Derek insisted was for security reasons. Security from what? Interpol? I started pacing, then crying, then pacing again. I called my best friend Jess, who answered mid-pickleball match and thought I was having a breakdown. Which, to be fair, I absolutely was. She told me to come over. I told her I wasn't sure if I was legally allowed to leave my house. She said, "Claire, your husband just got cuffed at a Michelin star restaurant. Pretty sure the rules are out the window now." I packed a bag, but before I could leave, the doorbell rang, and what I saw on the other side of that door nearly made me drop the wine bottle I was clutching like a security blanket. It wasn't the police, it was her, and I swear to God, she looked exactly like me. She didn't just look like me. She looked like a version of me I'd be jealous of. Same long brown hair, but blown out like she had a personal glam team on speed dial. Same sharp jawline, but hers was highlighted to the gods. Same lips, same eyes. Even the same nervous half smile I used when I didn't know whether to scream or hug someone. Only I'd never seen this woman in my life. She tilted her head and said, "Claire, right? I'm Olivia. I think we need to talk. About Derek." And just like that, the floor fell out from under me. Now, I've seen enough Netflix thrillers to know you don't let the mysterious, almost clone of yourself into your house after your husband gets arrested for international fraud. But I also had a kitchen knife nearby and zero will to live. So, naturally, I let her in. Olivia sat at my marble island like she'd been there before. She even reached for the wine I was drinking and poured herself a glass like we were sorority sisters catching up after a long semester. I just stared at her, trying to make sense of the fact that she was wearing my necklace. No, not one like it. Mine. A vintage gold charm I'd bought years ago at a flea market in Palm Springs. Derek said it was too sentimental and that I should let go of clutter. He must have given it to her. So I asked the obvious. "Are you his mistress?" And she laughed. Not the polite kind. The full-body kind that made her nearly spill the wine. "Mistress?" she said. God, I wish it were that simple. Turns out Olivia wasn't his side piece. She was his first wife, legally married. Still. As in, no divorce. No papers, no annulment. Just a shiny little bigamy bomb dropped in the middle of my living room. I started shaking. Like, uncontrollably. The kind of shaking where your teeth rattle and your vision goes all VHS static. I had to sit down, which was unfortunate because I missed the chair and landed hard on the floor. Olivia didn't flinch. She just sipped her wine and waited. "I'm sorry," I mumbled. "Did you just say wife?" She nodded. "Since 2014. Vegas. Super classy. The efficient wore Crocs." I couldn't tell if she was joking or if this was just what trauma bonding looked like. Either way, my brain was struggling to compute what the hell was happening. Because if Olivia was his wife, then what was I? And if I was wife number 2, how many others were there? 3, she said casually, as if reading my mind. "You're number 3. That I know of. That I know of." That phrase should be illegal. And before I could respond, she pulled out her phone and opened a folder labeled Receipts. I'm not kidding. It was actually called Receipts. Inside were photos, credit card statements, screenshots, flight itineraries, and a selfie of Derek kissing her at a beachside wedding in Tulum last year. While I was at home recovering from a fake stomach flu, he said he caught at a business retreat. I felt like vomiting, Not crying, not yelling, just straight-up exorcist-style vomiting. I barely made it to the sink. While I was hunched over, Olivia casually asked, "Did he also tell you he used to work for the State Department? Or was it MI6 this time?" I turned back, wiping my mouth. "He told me he was a financial advisor." She snorted. "Right, because the best advisors store cash in a literal duffel bag under their bed." I froze, because she wasn't guessing. She was remembering. "How do you know about the bag?" I asked. And she gave me a look that said, "Sweetheart, we've both been living in the same horror movie." And that's when she dropped the final bomb of the night. "Claire," she said, finishing the wine and standing to leave, "you might want to call a lawyer. The feds don't think you're innocent." Then she was gone, and I was alone, with nothing but a half-empty bottle of Chardonnay, a bag of lies under my bed, and the horrifying realization that I might be going to prison for a man who never existed. I didn't sleep that night, not even a blink. I just lay there on top of the covers, still in yesterday's makeup, still in the outfit I wore to what was supposed to be a romantic anniversary dinner, and listened to the hum of the fridge like it was some kind of doomsday clock ticking down the final seconds of my old life. By 6 a.m., I had made coffee strong enough to melt a spoon and started doing what I hadn't dared to do before. Dig, not emotional digging. Literal, digital, forensic style scrolling through every email, text, Dropbox folder, and sketchy photo backup I could get my hands on. It's amazing how much you can miss when you're too busy feeling grateful for the lie you're living. The deeper I went, the weirder things got. Derek's LinkedIn had vanished. His company website now led to a domain for sale page with a cartoon frog and a phone number in Bulgaria. I checked our lease. Except surprise, we didn't have one. The house wasn't rented or owned in either of our names. It was in the name of some LLC, with no physical office and an agent named Theo Lichtenstein, who, according to the one article I found, died in 2019. Of a snake bite. In Sweden. If I hadn't been actively spiraling, I probably would have laughed. Snake bites, LLCs, a dead agent named Theo. Derek's lies weren't just lies. They were cinematic. Jess came over around 9 a.m., still in gym clothes, and clutching a protein smoothie she immediately set down when she saw my face. She didn't even ask what happened. She just hugged me for way longer than usual and whispered, "Okay, we're going to fix this, or burn it down. Your choice." I told her everything. Well, everything I could process without bursting into flames. About Olivia, the fake bank accounts, the $2 million transfer, the fact that the feds maybe, possibly, definitely had my name on something. Jess didn't flinch. She's a divorce attorney, so she's heard her share of crazy. But even she looked rattled. "Claire," she said, opening her laptop faster than I thought humanly possible, "you need a criminal lawyer, and also maybe a therapist, and possibly a new identity." I almost smiled. Almost. We started making a list. Not a helpful list like steps to clear my name. No, this was a revenge list. Step 1, find out who else Derek lied to. Step 2, tell them. Step 3, flip the script, because I wasn't going down for him. Not for a man who recycled love letters, stole my grandmother's earrings, and, oh yeah, pretended to be a government agent when he couldn't even assemble IKEA furniture without crying. At noon, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Then I played it back on speaker. "Miss Bennett, this is Agent Coates from the Financial Crimes Division. We'd like to ask you a few questions about Derek Stanton. Please call us back at your earliest convenience." My stomach dropped. Derek Stanton. He never told me his last name. Stanton. His name was Stanton. For 3 years, I thought I was married to a man named Derek Holloway. It was embroidered on his shirts, monogrammed on his stupid leather luggage, printed on the fake business cards he handed out like mints. Holloway sounded like old money, like prep school and offshore trust funds and jazz. But Stanton? Stanton was the name of a man who disappears in the middle of the night and leaves behind nothing but unpaid bills and burner phones. I called Agent Coates back, because I'm not stupid, just emotionally concussed. And let me tell you, nothing sobers you up faster than hearing the words federal investigation, wire fraud, and potential accessory all in the same sentence before you've even had lunch. He was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that tells you he already knows way more than he's letting on. He said they'd been building a case on Derek for over a year, that he had multiple aliases, multiple bank accounts, and, wait for it, multiple wives. Wives. Plural. Olivia wasn't even the first, or the second. She was number 4. I was number 5. I nearly dropped the phone. Agent Coates asked me if I had access to Derek's personal files. I told him I didn't even know where Derek kept his socks. Then he asked if I still had the bag of cash. The what? Apparently, there was supposed to be a duffel bag of money. Real money. Physically stashed somewhere in the house. The kind of money that doesn't come with routing numbers. The kind that disappears fast and quietly if you're good at running. I laughed and told him the only bag I had was a knockoff Celine, and it was full of almonds and receipts. He didn't laugh. After I hung up, I tore the house apart. I flipped mattresses, ripped out drawers, took apart the air vents like I was starring in my own personal Prison Break movie. And then behind the fake panel in the back of our walk-in closet, the one Derek said he had installed for extra insulation, I found it, a navy blue duffel bag, heavy. I dragged it out, half expecting it to be filled with gym clothes or bricks or dead raccoons at this point. But when I unzipped it, my mouth actually went dry. It was cash, bundles of it, neatly stacked, wrapped in rubber bands, smelling like ink and fear. Hundreds, 50s, even a few $20 bills, like Derek wanted to keep it relatable. I counted 5 bundles before I gave up. It had to be at least $300,000, maybe more. The kind of money that makes people disappear. The kind of money that ruins lives, or saves them, depending on which side of the story you're on. Jess stared at the bag like it was radioactive. "Claire," she said, whispering like the walls were listening, "you need to call that agent back, right now." But I didn't. Because in that moment, standing in a house I didn't own, surrounded by furniture I'd never paid for, married to a man who didn't legally exist, a thought hit me that I couldn't shake. What if I kept it? What if, for once in my life, I stopped being the mark and started playing the game? I didn't keep the money, okay? Let's just get that out of the way before you start imagining me on a beach in Tulum, sipping cocktails with a new identity and a bad haircut. I thought about it. For longer than I should have. But ultimately, I was still the kind of person who said, "Bless you," to strangers, and returned shopping carts, even when it was raining. So instead, I called Agent Coates back. I told him I found something he'd probably want to see, and he said a team would be there in an hour. A team. Not an officer or a colleague. A full-on team. I half expected them to show up in hazmat suits and start vacuum sealing the sofa. Jess stayed with me the whole time. She was still in her gym clothes, bless her heart, and refused to leave even when I told her she probably had better things to do than hang around with a maybe accomplice in a federal fraud case. She just shrugged and said, "Hey, I was due for a detox anyway. Consider this a spiritual cleanse." We waited. I kept pacing. Jess kept Googling. At one point, she read aloud a quote from some FBI blog post about how most white-collar criminals appear excessively normal. She glanced at me and added, "I mean, they're not wrong." The agents showed up just after noon. No sirens, no drama. Just a very calm knock at the door and a bunch of people in khakis and serious expressions. One of them, a woman who introduced herself as Special Agent Turner, thanked me for cooperating like I had a choice. They photographed the bag, logged every bundle, took it all without saying much. No lectures, no warnings, just the sound of latex gloves snapping and Ziploc bags sealing. It was strangely anticlimactic. After they left, I expected to feel relieved or proud, or at least righteous. Instead, I just felt flat, like all the adrenaline had drained out of me. And now I was just another woman with a broken fantasy and a very expensive coffee table that might have been paid for with Bitcoin. Jess made us tea. I didn't know we had tea. Apparently, Derek had ordered some exotic blend from Japan that tasted like grass and sadness. We drank it anyway. "I know this is a bad time," Jess said carefully, "but have you thought about what you're going to do next?" I hadn't, not really. I'd been too busy surviving. Too busy reacting to bombs being dropped on my life every 3 minutes. But now the dust was starting to settle, and I realized I didn't just want to move on. I wanted answers. Real ones. Not just about Derek, about me, about how I'd missed every single red flag, about why I was so quick to believe in fairy tales dressed up in fitted blazers and expensive cologne. Because if Derek was that good at pretending, what did that say about me? 3 days after handing over the money, I got a letter. Not an email. Not a phone call. An actual letter, handwritten, postmarked from a town in Nevada I'd never heard of. No return address. Just my name in bold, precise cursive on the front. Inside, a single sheet of paper and a Polaroid. The paper said, "You were never supposed to find out. I'm sorry. Don't trust anyone. D." The Polaroid showed Derek, real Derek, not the charming hologram version, standing next to a beat-up RV with a woman I'd never seen before and a little boy who looked exactly like him. And I mean exactly. Same eyes, same lopsided grin, same smug expression that made you want to slap him or kiss him depending on the angle. I stared at that photo for a long time, long enough for Jess to come back from the grocery store and immediately drop a bag of almond milk and frozen dumplings when she saw my face. I didn't even have to say anything. I just held up the photo like it was a warrant for my own emotional arrest. "A kid?" she whispered. "He has a freaking kid?" I nodded. "Claire, he sent you this. He knows where you are?" That hadn't even hit me yet. My skin went cold. Not goosebumps, actual cold, like my body realized something my brain was too slow to catch. Derek wasn't gone, he wasn't hiding, he was watching. That night, I couldn't stay in the house. Jess all but shoved me into her car and drove me to her place, which smelled like eucalyptus and revenge. We triple-locked the door. She put a baseball bat by the bed. We didn't sleep. The next morning, Agent Coates called. They lost him. Apparently, Derek had been transferred from county holding to a federal facility for pre-trial processing. Somewhere between point A and point B, the transport van got rerouted, digitally rerouted. Someone hacked into the system, changed the paperwork, and the van showed up empty at the federal intake gate. The driver had no idea. The guards had no idea. Nobody knew anything except one terrifying, impossible fact. Derek Stanton had vanished. I felt like I was going to throw up. Again. For maybe the 10th time in a week. Coates asked if I'd received any contact. I lied. I told him no. I don't know why. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe I was scared he'd think I was helping. Maybe I just needed to hold on to something that was mine, even if it was a crumpled photo and 5 words scrawled by a ghost in my life. The fear didn't hit all at once. It came in waves, like when I realized I'd given this man access to everything, my passwords, my schedule, my family's addresses, or when I remembered that I had signed half the financial documents. Blindly, trustingly, with a glitter pen once. But the worst moment came later that day. Jess was in the shower. I was pacing her living room, trying to breathe, trying to think. I opened the window for air, just a crack. And that's when I saw it. Across the street. Parked at an odd angle. The RV, same dents, same paint, same tiny cactus bobblehead on the dash, watching, waiting. Like he wanted me to know this wasn't over. Not even close. I didn't scream. I didn't call the cops. I didn't even shut the window. I just stood there, heart jackhammering in my chest, staring at that dented RV like it was the last boss level of some twisted video game I never signed up to play. Derek was watching me. Not hiding, not running. Watching. Like this was all some elaborate performance and I was the only one who hadn't figured out her role yet. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands, ready to finally tell Agent Coates everything. About the letter, the photo, the RV, the whole mess I'd been too scared to admit out loud. But I didn't call him. I called Olivia. Because if anyone understood the logic of a narcissist on the run with a god complex in a duffel bag full of other people's dreams, it was wife number 4. She picked up on the first ring. No hello. Just, "Where is he?" I told her. I told her everything. And for the first time since she walked into my life in a knockoff version of my outfit, we were on the same side. She didn't hesitate. "Stay inside. Don't talk to him. I'll be there in 30. 32 minutes later, she pulled up in a beat-up Honda with duct tape on the mirror and the energy of a woman who had nothing left to lose. We didn't have a plan. But somehow, between adrenaline, rage, and 2 women who had nothing but questions and legal exposure, we came up with something that looked a lot like justice. Olivia walked across the street first. She didn't knock. She didn't flinch. She opened the RV door like she'd done it 100 times before. And there he was, Derek Stanton, or Holloway, or whatever the hell his name was that week, sitting at a tiny table with a smug smile and 2 cups of coffee like he'd been expecting brunch. I stayed hidden, phone in hand, already connected to Agent Coates, call muted but recording everything, every word, every lie, every pathetic attempt at manipulation. He told Olivia she was the only one he ever loved, that I was a mistake, that the other women were lonely and transactional. that the money wasn't stolen, it was borrowed in anticipation of success. He said I would forgive him, that I always did. That's when I stepped into the RV. No, I said, voice flat. This time I brought witnesses. Coates and his team pulled up exactly 4 minutes later. They arrested him quietly. No chaos, no guns, no smashed rose, just cold metal cuffs and a long list of federal charges. Olivia and I stood outside the RV, watching the man who'd rewritten our lives get tucked into the back of a black SUV like the garbage day had finally come. Neither of us said anything. We didn't have to. Weeks later, we testified together. We sat side by side in court, wearing black like widows at the funeral of our former lives. He didn't look at us once. He was sentenced to 32 years without parole. Turns out the FBI doesn't like being lied to either. I moved out of the house, sold the furniture, cut my hair, didn't change my name, but I did change everything else. Sometimes I still think about the version of me who wore those heels and believed in dinner reservations and texted, "On my way, babe," like her life wasn't made of glass. But that girl's gone. Now I make my own money, my own choices. And if I ever see another man with an RV and a charming smile, I smile right back, and then I run him over. Metaphorically, of course. Probably,